Thank you very much, Peter. I think you can hear me well,
Yes.
see me and see the presentation. First of all, thanks for this invitation to give the first keynote presentation. And it's an honor for me and for IHA to be here and participating and listening and learning from all of the research done in the FIThydro project. So first of all, I would like to start with introduction of the context and dimension of hydropower in the global level. So there is 1,308 gigawatts of installed capacity of hydropower in 2019. This was an increase by 1.2 from respect to 2018. However, was down the 5-year average of 2.1%. This is the require the 2% increase every year to meet the Paris Agreement if we want to achieve the climate targets. In terms of generation, it was 4,306 terawatt hour. The total hydroelectricity generated, this is about 16% of global electricity generation and is more than all the other renewable sources together. In terms of regions, the East Asian Pacific leads on installed capacity, followed by Europe, but Europe is surpassed by the Americans in terms of generation because for them, hydropower is more core to the grid and provides more baseload than in Europe. Talking about fish, that is the topic of this conference. So 55% of all species rely on freshwater habitats for their survival, but also we need them because they provide sources of food and income to humans. And in general, freshwater species are important to local ecosystems and key to flood and erosion control. Freshwater species in general are going extinct more rapidly than terrestrial or marine. Almost 1/3 face extinction due to habitat loss, pollution, overharvesting. In vertebrate populations, they have suffered a decline of 83% in 44 years, and these rates could be higher among fish species. So all these, they have many causes. Hydropower has an adverse impact. It's a small fraction of guilt in all of this, but it does have an impact on freshwater species. So the hydropower projects need to identify and manage those impacts in a responsive and sustainable way because it's crucial to the conservation of biodiversity. Just looking a little bit more to Europe, where the hydropower installed capacity is. So Norway and Turkey are the largest countries by installed capacity, followed by France, Italy, and Spain. And in 2019, the half of the added capacity was also in Norway and Turkey. Last year, in 2020, the pandemic year, the renewables generated more electricity than fossil fuels for the first time in the European Union 27. So there was a drop in demand due to COVID, so maybe that's why it was the surpass, but we are happy to say that that was a big milestone in 2020 for the renewable sector. Hydropower was the major provider of electricity supply, and hydropower storage specifically contributed to 13% of overall electricity supply. Hydropower generation was reported around 350 terawatt hour in 2020, and that was higher than in 2029, given there was higher precipitation, and capacity increased but remained relatively stable. Hydropower is among the cleanest sources of electricity with a low greenhouse gases emission intensity compared to other sources of electricity. If hydropower was replaced with burning coal, up to 4 billion tons of additional greenhouse gases would be emitted per year. And global emissions from fossil fuels industry would increase by 10%. Hydropower not only contributes to mitigate climate, but also to support the decarbonization of the systems by enabling the integration of wind and solar. And to be able to do this and reach the Paris Climate Agreement, is estimated that hydropower installed capacity needs to increase by 850 gigawatts by 2040. This means that the investment needs to double up to $100 billion US dollars annually. And the special focus of this investment should be in Africa and Asia. But let's go back to Europe. Again, in the next decade, we are seeing that there will be a decline in fossil fuels and nuclear, but hydro is expected to increase, but in a kind of a slow pace, as we were seeing in the past years. However, I want to make a remark for the aging fleet. So over 100 gigawatts of conventional hydro and 25 gigawatts of pumped storage hydro is over 40 years old. And are due to modernization. This provides a unique opportunity to upgrade the facilities and increase the installed capacity in those rather than to create new hydropower dams. And solar and wind will almost triple. By 2030, is expected 1,400 terawatt hour of produced electricity from those renewable sources. That would be, in terms of, to give you a dimension, is 30% of the all global hydropower electricity generated. But we need to have some considerations for hydropower in Europe. One is the services that provides in terms of climate adaptation, so that storage capability and the flexibility that gives to the grid in order to enable the integration of intermittent renewable sources like wind and solar. So hydropower role is crucial to support these renewables and the decarbonization, as we said, and pumped storage especially. That's why IHA created this pumped storage international forum to help shape and the role of pumped storage, given that faces some market and regulatory challenges. In terms of the infrastructure, we said that the hydropower fleet is aging, and in terms of also of the operations, the hydropower needs to be resilient to this climatological and hydrological variability. Also, taking into account that operations, we are seeing a shift from base load to provide peaking, and that will affect the physics downstream. And in fact, there is one session afterwards about hydro peaking and how this will affect. And last consideration that I remark here is the European taxonomy that is being developed, that this defines green activities that contribute to one of the environmental objectives that could be climate adaptation. But one objective means that you achieve that one and you don't have to do significant harm to others, like healthy ecosystems, again, the preservation of biodiversity. To do all of this, hydropower is a mature technology, but needs to demonstrate like their good performance and do it even better. So we support research and innovation. And here there is another Horizon 2020 project, the X-Flex Hydro. Given this rapid increase in wind and solar and the required role of hydropower to balance the grid, this project aims to demonstrate which innovative hydroelectric technologies could enhance this hydropower plant flexibility and performance. So new technologies include variable speed turbines, hydraulic source circuits, smart digit controls, battery, hydro hybrid. You can find more information in the website. Another project that I really like a lot, is close to my beginnings in IHA, is the hydro sediment, the home of sediment management. And I think this is quite relevant also for the topic that we are having today in this conference. So this is an international network to promote sustainable sediment management practice and adaptation to climate change. The problem is that when we are creating a dam in the river, we are fragmenting the river, there's disturbance to that sediment flow, loss of connectivity, could also has as a consequence sedimentation of in the reservoir, turbine abrasion, and in general it makes an impact all the sediment disturbance into loss of biodiversity and loss of storage capacity in the reservoir. So the challenge is to give that continuity to the sediment flow, and the HydroSedinet network provides this platform to share technical tools to assess and design sediment management strategies, and share news and events and research activities. So I encourage you, especially academia, to go and sign up to be included into the network. And lastly, we are also collaborating in the Hydropower Europe project, also in 2020. Here I will not go in detail because Anton Slaish will present this project at the end of this conference, but basically builds on the vision to achieve a research and innovation agenda and technology roadmap for the hydropower sector, gathers all relevant stakeholders through public debates and consultation in order to support further that innovation that is needed in the sector. But I want to now touch on what is the sustainable hydropower, and I will go into more detail about the relevance for biodiversity. So the IHA developed these guidelines that define good practice in 2004 as a consequence of the World Commission's dams report in 2000 that criticized the performance of large dams in terms of loss of biodiversity and failure to implement mitigation measures. After the guidelines, the Hydropower Sustainability Assessment Protocol, that is the tool that measures performance, was launched in 2006. And today we have also a third tool, that is the Hydropower Environmental Social Governance Gap Analysis Tool, the ESG, that measures performance only in those relevant topics. So going deeper into one of the chapters of these guidelines and tools is the biodiversity and invasive species topic that is relevant to the topic of this conference, where hydropower needs to identify but demonstrate their commitment to biodiversity following the mitigation hierarchy. They avoid, minimize, mitigate, and compensate. So first of all, after identifying the impacts, they need to look at the avoidance of those impacts. Maybe it could be the change of site location. If not possible, then to minimize the adverse impacts, for example, by implementing a minimum environmental flow for downstream river health. If no avoidance or minimization of the adverse impacts is possible, then a hydropower project needs to mitigate or compensate the lost habitat. There could be restoring the lost habitat, breeding in hatcheries, catch and release programs, fish-friendly turbines, etc. Or compensation would be like offsetting the measures with a net positive outcome in a comparable landscape. There are many biodiversity issues that we are looking here and measures to address this passage of aquatic species. That here I will be super interesting to hear all the measures or innovative measures that you are proposing to address this passage of aquatic species and be able to mitigate the adverse impacts by hydropower. And just to finalize, I want to bring you two case studies that were assessed by the Hydropower Sustainability Assessment Protocol. One is the Trevelyan Hydropower Project in Tasmania, in Australia. Tasmania is one of the most biodiverse islands in the world, and in the Esk River Basin, where the project is located, they found 244 endangered species. Especially, there was an impact because of the fragmentation on the Tasmanian endangered swordfin eels and lamprey. So one of the measures to minimize the impact, the adverse impact in swordfin eels, it was to set the minimum environmental flow to 1.5 cubic meters per second. Other measures was the translocation operations, and they constructed an elbow ladder that you can see in your in the picture on your right. You can see the dimensions because you see the feet there. That is the zoo from Atle Harvey that took that picture. This later on, this elbow ladder has been converted to an eel bypass. However, despite of all these measures, the assessment score that they have one gap against basic good practice. So it was kind of a low score for this project, despite all these measures that they put in place, because they didn't find monitoring of the effectiveness of these measures to control the biological trend. They had some monitoring for a couple of years, but then they stopped. And that was the gap. And also because there was no monitoring to understand other impacts on biodiversity. So like this, you can see how monitoring is really important to understand and identify and continue the monitoring of the effectiveness of the measures that hydropower needs to take in a responsible and sustainable way. Another topic, another case study, sorry, it was the Reventazon hydropower project in the Reventazon River in Costa Rica. It is a tropical forest. Reventazon is much larger hydropower plant than Trevelin. It's 305 megawatts, and it's in a cascade scheme. So there are like 4 or 5 upstream hydropower projects. So it's already a very fragmented river. But given that it's a tropical forest, has very high levels of biodiversity. They found 471 fauna species. Of those are 52 fish species and 193 flora species. There were significant impacts on migratory fish species, as you can imagine, and there was loss of critical river habitats and biological corridors. So what they did, they went beyond like any type of measures for aquatic passage, and they went for an offsetting program as a compensation for the impact of the project. So they took the Paris-Mina and Dos Novillos basin that is in parallel to Reventazon, that is a free-flowing river, totally virgin, with no hydropower plants or no hydropower developments, and is tributary to the Reventazon in the floodplain. So they protected the whole river, like 100 square kilometers of protected area, and they will not be development for 25 years by law. So this means that they improved the connectivity in that area. They translocated fish species, especially those migratory fish species. So they monitor that they increase the presence. They have improved the better quality, and in total, they have measured that there is a net gain of 40% of riparian habitat. Because of all this offset program, they score proven best practices, and they have a score of 5 according to the sustainability assessment protocol. So here I finish my presentation. So I'm looking forward to the proposed measures and innovative technologies that they will be presented during this conference, because they will be very useful to advance the good practices in the sector and do mitigate the impacts in a responsible and sustainable way. So thank you very much. Over to you, Peter.